This week's episode is sponsored by the Ordway Center for the Performing Arts in downtown St. Paul, presenting Mandy Patinkin, Being Alive with Adam Ben David on piano on April 19th and 21st. A Tony and Emmy award-winning performer, Being Alive presents the acclaimed actor, singer, storyteller in his most electrifying role, concert performer. Being Alive is a collection of many of Mandy's favorite Broadway and classic American tunes, from Irving Berlin to Stephen Sondheim, from Cole Porter to Harry Chapin. Mandy Patinkin takes you on a dazzling musical journey you'll never forget. For tickets and more information, go to ordway.org or click the link in the show notes. Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talked to Sharyn Jackson, a food writer at the Minneapolis Star Tribune. We talk about the awesome food scene in the Twin Cities, what kind of culinary trends may be headed our way, and her quest for a really good challah on this week's Who the Folk podcast. But before we hear from Sharyn, check out the new and improved TC Jewfolk merch store with newly designed hats, shirts, stickers, and tote bags that help you look fun and stylish and help support TC Jewfolk's mission at the same time. Check it out at tcjewfolk.com/store. Sharyn Jackson, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Very excited to talk to you. You are the fourth current or recently ex-Star Tribune writer or Star Tribune staffer, I should say. Apologies, Aaron Levinsky, photographer, that I've had on the show recently. You come highly recommended by your Strib coworkers and our board member, Amy Shapiro, who has very eagerly recommended you, so I'm very happy to talk to you. You are a Star Tribune journalist. You have probably one of the most fun beats right now. Not just right now, but like any time that you could have ever. You're one of the Star Tribune food writers.
Right.
I guess first of all, for starters, how do you get into food as a writing niche? Because I think everybody sort of starts in news and eventually either stays there or ends up doing other stuff at some point. But like, how do you end up in food?
Yeah. There's different ways about it. Okay. For me, you're right, I did start in news. But before I was a news reporter in my journalism career, I was more of an arts and culture reporter and features writer in New York City. That's where I'm from, that area. So, and when I lived in New York City, I also worked in restaurants because it's, what you do. So I worked in the basement of a very fancy restaurant where I answered the phones and made reservations, and it was intense.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you name the restaurant?
Yeah, I can. It's Babbo. It's for a Mario Batali.
Oh, yes.
Place. And this was at the height of his celebrity.
Yes.
When I was in college, I worked there. And the lengths people would try to go to get reservations was just out of control. So,
I mean, the height of his popularity was really sort of peak celebrity chef. I'm using air quotes. People can't see that, but peak celebrity chef era sort of foodie was that time. Absolutely.
And it was like, also while I was there, the New Yorker article about him came out that then became a book later. And it was like he was in the stratosphere. Yeah. And the celebrities that were coming in there all the time, and like hotel concierges calling me and trying to like offer me rooms in exchange for reservations for their clients.
No, you were right. Bribe was right.
I got like shipments of designer clothes. I got envelopes of cash that would just show up with my name on it. Like it was...
Like, that's a book right there.
I know. Right at the same time I was working there, someone wrote a play, but it ended up on Broadway later, but it was a one-man play about being a reservationist in a fancy restaurant, and it captures it exactly. Like, I went and saw it on Broadway years later, and I was like, oh my God.
It's a little close to home.
Yeah. So for me, I was always like, fascinated by the like fancy restaurant world and what that all was like and who, set foot in those places. And then I ended up doing some other stuff, but then I was covering arts and culture in New York City and nightlife and that sort of thing and just having the time of my life in my 20s. And then I was like, oh, I should be a real journalist, with air quotes.
Yes.
And so then I decided to go to grad school later at Columbia, and I got my master's in journalism, and I started doing more news features and that kind of thing, like combining things that I was interested in that were newsy and kind of fun and weird and quirky. And then at that point, I was living in New York, and I was freelancing like crazy. And I was like, this isn't sustainable. I want a full-time job. And you kind of have to leave New York to do that. This is the old school journalism model. Like,
Right.
not everyone does that anymore, but
No.
I was on the cusp, and I was like, no, I'm going to do that thing where I travel around the country and get jobs at different papers. And so I, for a few years, was a news reporter. I worked in Des Moines, Iowa, at the Des Moines Register as a news reporter. And I had done an internship here right before then in the features department at the Star Tribune.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because when I was finishing grad school, I was like eligible for internships all over the country, even though I was like, everybody else was like in undergrad, and I was like 10 years older than everybody. But I was like, I'm going to be an intern. And so I came out here for the summer from New York, and I was like, oh man, Minneapolis is the best. Like, and it's so cheap to live here, and it's so beautiful. And so then Des Moines offered me a job, and I was like, cool, I can live in the Midwest. I did it for the summer, totally tricked me. Went to Des Moines, had like 2 really rough winters, and then I was like, I'm done. And but then they had a job here for me, and I was like, all right, let's keep going in the Midwest. And now I'm here 10 years later. But I started here in the features department as a general assignment reporter.
Okay.
So I was doing lifestyle and profiles and things, and again, like quirky story. I always kind of do quirky stuff. And then and I started doing some food stuff at the same time, just for fun, like occasional like cookbook reviews or like writing about kind of funny foods that I was coming across. And then 6 years ago, someone else that was covering food left, and they asked me if I wanted to do the job, and I said yes. And I approached it like a news reporter, honestly, like it was a beat.
Yeah, no, food, it definitely is a beat, but I always find it interesting if yes, you have pretty significant restaurant, not like in the kitchen restaurant background.
Yeah, I don't have a culinary background.
See, I was sort of wondering if you had that culinary background and then also wrote, or how exactly it came together.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean by there's a lot of different ways, because like there are definitely amazing food writers out there that started more in the culinary realm, people who are chefs and and write beautifully about it, and then there's people who started in back in the day it was blogs, now it's Instagram, but like people who just are into food and who are covering it constantly and building up that those sources and in the community. So there's that, and I very much approached it as this is another topic area like any other that I would approach as a reporter. It's a very newsy beat, even though I'm in the features department. It's like one of the most competitive newsy beats in the city, because there's actually a lot of other food reporters and other publications.
Right.
So we're competing constantly. We're trying to get scoops. We're trying to be first. It's so for me, I approach it as being a journalist.
Yeah. No, and I think you have to. I mean, I think people probably see food writing the same way they see like entertainment writing, reviewing as sort of like a glamour beat. Like you get to eat at all these cool places, and you get to, or you get to see all these cool shows and get to see movies early, and
but you got to see a lot of bad ones too.
You have to see a lot of bad ones.
And you got to eat a lot of stuff you don't want to eat.
Right.
And you got a lot of tummy aches after.
Oh, I would imagine. Like that's sort of it's not all fun and games all the time.
No, and it's not all eating 24/7, because that would kill me. But there's definitely just talking and learning and different kinds of things. But there is a lot of eating too, and we go on a lot of eating adventures around the city, my colleague and I, and then there's definitely days where I'm like, I can't do this.
Right. Like if I see another cheese curd, I'm going to kill someone.
I've been lucky to kind of avoid cheese curds for the most part in my reporting career, but yeah.
Every once in a while, like a good cheese curd is really good though.
Yeah, I save it for the state fair.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like my once a year. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. Just checking.
Once a year, cheese curds. Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah.
Totally get that. You mentioned we don't need to name drop other, reporters, from other other places or other outlets, but like, there are a ton of unbelievable food writers you're working with in the city.
Yeah.
Or working against, I suppose, as it were.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, we're all really friendly, I think. Because because I go out so much and I see these people all the time.
Right.
And so, these are my dining companions. I see some food writers more than I see my spouse at a dinner table. So,
I mean, that's also the job, but also little sad.
I mean,
I mean, it's the business. It's what you both signed up for. Like,
yeah,
your spouse knew what they were getting into.
I mean, I think that goes back to way before I was a food writer, just being a journalist, like
Yes.
the last minute, like, oh, we have plans to go away to a cabin this weekend, but I just found out this thing is happening and I really want to go to it because it would make a great story. Please, is that okay if we go a day later to the cabin? Like, I've done that. I've done that a lot. And I try and be respectful of it. And now we have little kids, and so I can't just be out every night leaving all the kid responsibilities to my wife. That's just not cool. So
It's
for
not,
me.
No, it's not. I mean, and
and I like to see my kids. So
how old are your kids?
Almost 3 and almost 6.
So those are pretty fun ages.
Yeah, I don't want to miss too much.
No, that's absolutely not.
I try to not go out on my own more than like once, maybe twice a week.
Yeah.
And otherwise, like, I love to take my spouse with me to stuff, but we have to get a babysitter, and it's expensive, and work doesn't cover a babysitter. So
no, it doesn't.
yeah. So, and then
Can you write that off like in your taxes?
I should. I'll try. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
What can they say? They could say no.
Listen, I'm not an accountant, so don't take my word for it.
You're not?
Oddly enough, no. But no, it's. I mean, it's cool that you get to do all these things, but yeah. But the family stuff also comes to play. I mean, like covering school board and city council meetings when my oldest was born, and it's like, hopefully the calendar lined up that it was only one night a week that I had to be out, but sometimes they fell 2 nights a week, or God forbid 3 meeting nights in a week, and it's like, it's just a drag. It's like, it's not how I really want to spend my time.
How old are your kids?
Now 19 and 14.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, this goes back.
Now they're on their own.
Except my 14-year-old still needs me to drive her everywhere.
Okay.
Soon. We'll see.
I mean, I definitely end up roping in my family to as much eating for work as possible. Whether it's like, oh, what are we going to do for dinner tonight? We need some takeout. I'm like, wait a sec. We got to try this place. Let's get takeout from there, or like I pick up my kid from school and he's like, can we get ice cream? And I'll be like, well, there's this new ice cream place that I need to try, so I'm going to drag you 45 minutes across the metro to try that ice cream,
Listen, you can have ice cream, but
we're going on a drive.
But it's going to be a bit of a road trip for you. So just, suck it up.
Yeah. Or like, I just need to drive 20 minutes out of my way to take a photo of this facade of a building because I don't have a picture for this one story, and then I'll give you a treat. Yeah.
Yes. Because also, like, that's what we have to do now as journalists. Like, I am my own photographer 99% of the time, and obviously the Star Tribune has phenomenal photographers. Hi, Aaron. And also, sometimes your phone is, you're taking your own stuff.
And we, in our department, like me and my colleague Joy Summers, like we do almost all of our own photography. I mean, Joy's an incredible photographer on her phone. I'm not as much, but I got a new phone that like takes better pictures. I feel like you see the results of that, but we I would say that we don't do a ton of photo assignments for the photo department unless it's like really special or it's like a portrait of somebody. I can't do that, but it's a plate of food or it's like a front door. I'm gonna do it.
Sure,
don't want to waste their time.
Yeah, no, that works. I get that. I mean, fortunately, the technology is improving. That yes, the camera in our pockets work just fine for probably 90% of what you need.
And so many people take food photos on their phones now. Like, you don't have to be, you don't even have to be an Instagrammer. People are just doing it anyway. They know this. And, like, I've noticed more and more restaurants are more brightly lit than they used to be. And
really?
I was like, what's that about? I was talking to somebody and I was like, what's with this trend of like bright restaurants? And someone, I don't remember who I was talking to, and they were like, the photos look better. And I was like,
that feels like a feature story.
I know. I'm looking into it.
That feels like a fun story to do. You should like talk to these restaurateurs and see if they're doing that because it's because that's how you. I mean, for better or worse, that's the trend is Instagram, and social media getting your word out about your places.
And I'm a super like I'm a lazy food photographer in that I will shoot whatever it is like in front of me at the table, no matter what the lighting or background. Whereas like other people will like get up and find the best light in the restaurant and da da da. And so that is why my food photos are a little more dark and sad. And I just don't want to stick out like that. I don't want to be that person that's walking through with a plate, but like sometimes you just have to if it's like, oh, this lighting is abysmal and this food is going to look like gross and no one's going to want to eat here, and then I feel terrible about it.
At least you don't bring like, I mean, you could just bring like a ring light or something.
That's another thing I don't want to do to stick out.
Listen, I understand that, but I feel like that would be better than walking around a restaurant with a plate of food looking for lighting.
Someone taught me something too with, because some other friends will be like, oh, do you want me to turn on my flashlight to light it? But then you get these crazy shadows.
Yeah, the shadows get weird.
So then if someone showed me that if you turn on the flashlight, but then put it behind a white napkin to like buffer it, then it's like a nice soft light. So there is that, but
look at these fun tricks I'm learning.
But again, I don't want to do any of those things. I just want to like take my quick picture and then
eat the food.
Yeah,
no, I get that.
I eat a lot of cold food after we finish taking pictures.
That's so sad. It's not how it should be. What are you noticing trend-wise in the Minneapolis food scene? Because obviously and I talked to a lot of actors and artists about this. Like, the theater and the arts community in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities, is phenomenal. So is the food scene. Mm-hmm. Food scene is really great.
Yes.
I think. What are you noticing in that realm?
It's interesting. I think one of the things that we started noticing the last few years, especially coming out of the pandemic, was like these super expensive tasting menu type experiences are more and more. I think pre-pandemic we had two that I can think of. We had Travail and we had Demi.
Yeah.
And at the time that Demi started, that was like the most expensive dinner you could buy.
Was Demi pre-pandemic?
Yeah. It's like 5 years old now.
Is it now? Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And it was such a big deal that like to go to dine out for two people, and pay all get the beverage pairing and the service fees and the taxes, it's going to be like $500, right? But like that is kind of so normal now.
And it's so good though.
Demi is so good. It is really good.
So good.
And funny enough, Demi hasn't really jacked up their prices in the past 5 years. So they're now one of the cheaper tasting menus in town, which just blows my mind. But there's so many more opportunities to have like an intimate dinner, at one table with just a few people. And it's like, several $100s and you're just being fed all these bites of like extravagant, delicious food and drink, and you're not having to think about anything. And I think that that's a big trend. And the funny thing is, I think that I noticed that like trends that are happening on the coasts, they get here a little later.
Sure.
So I'm hearing now rumblings on the coast of like, we're done with this. Like we're so over these tasting menus. Like, let's go back to like, same thing with like the QR code ordering, like that was happening. And then now like I was in Las Vegas last week, which is super interesting because like, it's the best chefs from all over the world are in one city.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see what the trends are there and be like, okay, this will probably come to us soon. So I went to a food hall where they were like, we are not QR code ordering. We are going to put the menus of each of our stalls on one menu, give it to you, and you're going to order from a server. And I'm like, so it's a diner then. Like, they're like, we're fixing all the problems with food halls. And I was like, so we're circling back.
Right. So you're right. It's a diner with lots of different restaurants, and you don't have to do the work of walking around.
You don't have to walk around. You don't have to take out your phone, which is a good thing, I think, to order, because I hate touching my phone and ordering. And people don't like that kind of aspect, or like you go with a group of friends and everybody wants something from a different place and you'll have to disperse and then find each other and you get it at different times and da-da-da. So this way you can get a few things from different places and be together. And so they're like, we're fixing the problem with the food hall. And I think it's great. I agree. I like it.
I like the idea of Malcolm Yards, at least, with the sort of the credit card, the swipe, and you can then do it. You don't have to take out your phone, you go to the different stalls. But it doesn't solve the problem of if you go with a group of people, you're right, you're all dispersing, and then you hope somebody finds a table somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think like there was a moment where we were like, oh, food halls is a trend, like here.
Yes.
And I think, again, we're a little behind, not behind, but things have been going on a little longer in some other cities before they got here. And now they're already changing there, and we're going to start to see changes here, I think.
Interesting. Because I like the food hall model.
Yeah.
It's fun, especially if you get good places in there.
Absolutely. I like it too. I also just like that I can get my favorite things from different restaurants all at the same time. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm not sure there's any other place where I could get rectangle pizza. As a native Detroiter, I'm a big fan of the Detroit style pizza, but to get rectangle and then Korean fried chicken, which is the best fried chicken I think I've ever eaten. In both, they're 3 stalls away from each other.
And then Bevizito ice cream for dessert.
Then Bevizito ice cream for dessert. Except we didn't because the line was just atrociously. It was the summer and the line was insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could do all of those things and then, have your choice of different beers to try.
Yeah.
All in one spot. It's kind of cool.
It is cool. But then you also kind of notice that like even though we're getting still new food halls, some aren't doing as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I mean, some of it to me is like, it's not just that you have all these different types of food in one place. You got to have good places in one place. That's, obviously key. You got to, in the end, it all comes down to, can you prepare good food? Mm-hmm. Which is what any restaurant should be, honestly.
Sure. Absolutely.
So how do you, with a couple of you doing food writing at the Strip, at least a couple of you, how do you sort of pick and choose who gets to do what?
Sometimes it comes down to who's available, because like if I'm working on a longer feature, then, and then there's news breaking and I'm like, I just can't, I have this other deadline.
That's...
then my colleague will pick something up. Other times it's just what interests us.
Okay.
Yeah, and we work together a lot.
Okay. A lot of co-byline stuff.
A lot of co-byline stuff because, again, it's like nicer to have someone to eat with than not. So,
for sure.
And then you can eat more if
right.
you can try more if there's 2 of you.
Absolutely.
So we love to kind of drive around and scout out stuff and and then like we come across something and one of us feels more passionate about it than the other. It's clear that that's the person that's going to write it. It's just we work really, really well together. I'm very lucky about that.
Do you have a lot of times where you're eating together and one of you really likes a place and one of you really doesn't?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So how
We're
do you
both highly opinionated people.
That you kind of need to be as a reviewer. But like I've noticed writing reviews is really, really hard work. Mm-hmm. I have lots of opinions, but how do I express it in an article that's like logical and coherent and isn't just like a lot of random thoughts is really hard. Like it's a lot harder, I think, than a lot of people think.
Well, I'm not a reviewer. I'm not a food critic.
Okay.
And yeah, we have a food critic. We have a restaurant critic.
Sure.
And what he does is very different than what I do. So but you do get to learn my opinion because we do write some pieces that are entirely based on the experience I had and what I'm sharing with you about it. It's different than a reported story.
But it's also different than a review.
It is.
It's somewhere in like that middle ground.
And I like to, when I have the time, I like to approach even those kinds of stories as a reported piece. Like I go and talk to the chef and find out like, well, why are you doing this thing that I tasted that I either liked or wasn't crazy about, but I know there's a story there that needs to be told.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not about like whether I like something or not isn't like the be all end all of if something's newsworthy actually.
Yeah.
Because I'm not the critic.
Right.
I'm here to like tell the story.
So, that I've done some of where it's like there's some first person and there's experiential, but it's clearly a reported piece, not full on opinion. So it's almost like it's like a news essay.
It's a gray area. I guess it's closest to like what columnists do or something, but we haven't distinguished it that way. And I am still an objective reporter in other ways, but like I'm also I'm eating so much that it's impossible for me to not have thoughts, right? And
absolutely.
And it's cool that I get to go to these places and share with people what it feels like to be there.
Yeah. Cuz like going out to restaurant, whether they're super high end, whether they're not, whether they're, new or old favorites, there is like such a communal experience to going out like that, to being able to try something new, to have these conversations with people that help shape your opinions to then go and write it when you're going to go write about it. I'm sure the things that your dining guests think about something probably influences you in some way.
Yeah, it could. I mean, if I'm with somebody and they try something and they think it's awful, like that's noteworthy, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm trying to look at like the bigger picture, and I very much care like what it feels like to be somewhere more than even the taste of something I'm eating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I taste something that's horrible, I'm probably just I'm not gonna tell people to eat it. You know?
Right. Right.
That's all. I'm just not gonna. Yeah, but I will tell people to eat the things that I loved.
Yeah.
You know, but I really like the atmosphere of a place, and the service matters a lot to me, and the drinks and the kind of the whole package. Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm looking for.
There was a kosher restaurant in town that before I started on staff at Jewfolk, the former editor and one of our freelancers went to, and they wrote about it, and they killed it. They did not have a very good dining experience.
Yeah.
And then the concept of the restaurant changed, and I reached out to the owner, and he said, I'm not talking to you. You wrote, I said, well, it wasn't me. Well, your publication did. I said, first of all, I wasn't on staff. Second of all, it was a review of the restaurant. Third, they didn't like the food they ate. It's not personal. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
And eventually I talked him into it and then wrote a review. And it was actually, the reimagining of the restaurant was actually pretty good.
Was this recent?
About a year or so ago.
So if I know the one you're talking about, so I'm not going to mention, but if I know the one you're talking about, I had dinner there and did not enjoy the food I had, and I also didn't end up writing anything about it.
And it's restaurant like we went for lunch, went with another food writer in town. We think we were each writing about it. We each sort of tried different things. We had conversations about it. And it was, and I had a conversation with a third food writer in town who went there and also had a good experience at that time. But also I can see how consistency is a problem.
Well, when you're reviewing something, or I don't know what the former reviewer did, like, do you go more than once? Do you, check for consistency, or because it could always be an off day. Like, and I always consider that.
Yes. And I don't know if they did. I think they went once and ordered a lot of food between the two of them. And that that's maybe short-sighted.
And maybe the chef wasn't even there that day.
Right.
Or, not that really excuses it, because anybody at any time should have a great experience.
Right.
But we, as a rule, not me personally, but our critic, he goes multiple times.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I went and also had sort of a lukewarm experience there, so who's to say? But also, I don't keep kosher. I don't feel the need to have to go to a kosher establishment because I can get a really good burger for a fraction of the price anywhere else in town.
For people who do keep kosher, they deserve great food at restaurants.
They absolutely do. Right, which is not to say they deserve subpar food. The options I also recognize the options for going out if you're in the kosher community, particularly in the Twin Cities,
very small,
highly limited.
Yeah,
and that's a bummer.
Yeah.
The lack of a great deli. They're fine delis. The lack of a great deli is a bummer.
It is. It really is.
It bums me out. I know growing up in Detroit is not growing up in New York or Montreal or, a lot of other places where it's like a delicacy. But grew up with really good delis in Detroit and then living in Chicago, and it's a bummer.
Yeah.
Again, what we have here is good. It's fine.
I feel the same way about certain styles of pizza, for example. As a native New Jerseyan, I'm just not going to get behind Minnesotan style pizza. So
what is Minnesota style pizza?
It's this super thin crust.
Like Heggie's style kind of?
Yeah, which I don't mind Heggie's. But
I don't mind Heggie's either.
But it's this cracker crust that I don't think there's any leavening in there at all. It's like matzah.
Right.
Like, I've had
If I want matzo pizza, I'll wait till Passover.
I'll have that on Passover.
That's
I don't
right.
need to go to a bar and have a matzo pizza.
Right.
On a random Tuesday. Not
Right.
going to do it. And then, like, I find the sauce to be quite sweet, and the cheese, sometimes it's not even mozzarella. There's, like, a whole mix of things. I don't know. We've had essays about, like, what is Minnesota pizza that my colleague wrote, because I just, like, and we've like,
You're so angry about it. Look, it's fine. Look, I'm with you.
I worked at a pizza place growing up, so in New Jersey. So like New York style pizza, that's my thing. And like, and then you get places that are like, oh, we make New York style pizza, or we make New York style bagels, and then I go and I'm like, oh, do you?
Right.
I'm like, I'll just have that when I go home to visit.
No, that's probably safest. Right. Like, it's funny. Growing up in Detroit, I did not really love Detroit style pizza until I, I got older. I love Chicago style deep dish. I know plenty of Chicagoans hate
that.
It's a pie with tomato sauce. Like, and great. Good cornmeal crust.
It's like a pot pie.
I will take that. It's fantastic to me. But I really like a little more crust. Like, my kids are one likes a little more traditional, the other just not a crust person. So like, they're not into that, but like, give me all the carbs.
The thing with the Minnesota pizza, back to that for a second, is there is no crust. You like, and also
it's square
it's
cut.
cut in square, so you get this tiny little triangle, and some people love that.
I know.
And I know that, with all food, it's like so much about nostalgia, about what you grew up with, what brings back these great memories or reminds you of your family or your childhood or whatever. And so like Minnesotans, you like your pizza, like, go for it. I'm happy for you.
Right. That's not pizza to me. Like, there's got to be, like, I like crust, even just like a traditional, from your standard
like
run of the mill.
Chewy,
Just give me a little chew,
doughy
little crunch.
situation.
Yes.
Or I love like a Neapolitan, Italian style. Like Punch is like the best pizza.
Oh my God, it's the best pizza.
I love it.
Yes.
That's what we eat here.
Simple, like that should be the Minnesota pizza style. Yeah. Is that kind of sort of
or like anything
style.
Ann Kim does.
100%. I mean, look, she's amazing. She does everywhere is good. And like, even like Hello Pizza, just like as a great neighborhood slice shop.
Yeah.
There's just not that many of those.
No. Well, I don't know that they're doing slices anymore since the pandemic.
That's
But
the couple times I've been there was pre-pandemic when they were doing it.
It's harder.
And where I live, it's a pain in the ass to get to.
See, I don't know why being able to grab a big greasy slice of pizza has to be a New York thing. Like, that should be a national right. You know, I don't know why we don't have places to walk up and grab a slice very much here.
No, that was a very college after going out with friends.
It's the cheapest meal you can get, and it's
79-cent slices on a Saturday night. Listen, I'm not sure.
I grew up in the dollar slice,
Yeah, I'm not sure it could be considered food what we were eating, but at that point in the evening or early morning hours, it was fine. It was fine. It didn't really matter. So I'm wondering, how much does your sort of Judaism and your does that enter in, or how do you think about that with your journalism work at all? Do they coincide, or is it just sort of separate pieces of you?
Like, as a journalist, no, I don't think it makes any difference. But I think when it comes to the things that interest me, you'll find that when we do write cookbook stories, like, I tend to write the ones about Jewish cookbooks, because when they arrive and I'm like, ooh, a Jewish cookbook, let me try this for the, Shabbat dinner and see what it is. And, and I want to interview the author. And so my interests do lead me. And, even with food, like, we're not Shomer Shabbos, but we do Shabbat every Friday night, and we get a challah, and like, that's one of my favorite things. I go from bakery to bakery to bakery, and I get different challahs all the time. And anytime I hear about another challah, I'm like, I got to go get that one. And, so I think that it does influence me as far as like the food choices I make here sometimes, or where I bring my kids, or that kind of thing.
What challahs have you found? I usually make them.
Do you? Okay, house. I fail at every challah I make.
Really?
It's impossible. I can't do it.
So just because you write about food doesn't mean you... I mean, and look, and I also recognize that baking and cooking are pretty different.
I used to love baking. I used to bake a lot more back in the day, like when I was like single and lived with my best friend, and we just loved cooking and baking all the time together and having parties. And and having people over and like catering for them and stuff. And but I think I realized that it was like not great for me to keep like baking cakes, because then like there is a cake on my counter all week and I just eat it.
Yeah.
So I tried to just like do less of that over the years, and now I'm in a place where like, yeah, I mean, we cook dinner all the time, and I sometimes like cooking and sometimes I just don't want to deal. It's mostly because I just don't want to clean up after. But
I understand.
but I do still bake. Breads have never, when the pandemic happened, everybody shut down and everybody started making sourdough. I didn't do it. I never got the starter. And then I was like too late to the thing. And I was like, well, now I'm like not doing the sourdough thing that everyone else is doing. So I'm just going to like be over here in my corner. So yeah.
I tried doing the starter. It did not.
Did you? I knew it wouldn't work for me because I'm not good with, I also can't keep like a plant alive. And I don't think I could keep a starter alive.
Huh. I wonder if that's why it failed for me. We are not plant people in our house also.
I'm not very nurturing of little, I don't know, organisms that have to grow in my house except for the children. Hopefully.
I was going to rescue you from that if you didn't get there yourself. I don't want anybody listening to think, you're neglecting your kids or anything.
No.
Not suggesting that at all. No, so I usually make challah. I'll do 3 at a time and then bake them, freeze 2. And then this way I've got a couple weeks, for the next couple weeks. I have to bake though, for tomorrow because we are well out in our freezer. So it's time, but where do you go to? I know this is a weird, be careful about naming those you like or don't like. But
no, this is, I've written about challah and I'm happy to tell you what I like. Let's see. I really like honey and rye. I recently had the challah from La Boulangerie Marguerite, and it was very good.
Really?
Although they didn't know... No, never mind. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
They didn't really know what I was asking for. The person at the counter I was like, do you have any challah? I was there on a Friday, and they're like, no. And then I looked at the menu, and there was a sandwich that was made on challah, and I was like, oh, but it says here that you have a challah sandwich. And they're like, oh, you mean challah? Oh, let me go check. And I was like, oh.
Oh, no.
Whatever, it's fine. It's fine. I'm happy they're making it. So and I found it. I liked it a lot. Yum is we go to Yum all the time.
Yep.
And get challahs there. And I have more that I really. Oh, but my favorite one is Breadsmith.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Both of them. They have the honey one and they have the vanilla one.
Yes.
I can't really tell the difference. They're both sweet. They're both so super stretchy.
Yes.
They're perfect. We just gobble them up and they make the best French toast the next day. And we got really into it because my kids' preschool, back pre-pandemic, every Friday, if you ordered it, every Friday they'd send home a challah in their backpack from Breadsmith.
Nice.
And so we got hooked. And then they stopped once the pandemic started, and they just brought it back this past Friday for the first time, and I was so excited. I ordered 2 challahs a week. I'm just my kid's carrying them. They're bigger than his head when I pick them up on Friday, and I'm giddy about it.
Somebody, said to me oh yeah, you make leftover challah. You make French toast with your leftover challah. I'm like, what is this leftover challah you speak of? It's a little bit. We'll wrap it up in foil, and when we undo the foil on Saturday morning, whoever goes downstairs with our dog, he knows what's coming and runs over and sits at our feet. It's hilarious because
you have a Jewish dog.
We very neurotic and everything.
No, we tend to have a little leftover and then make French toast Saturday mornings, and it's divine. A surprise challah, because one time we did a taste test where we grabbed challahs from a bunch of different bakeries, super high-end challahs.
Yeah.
And then someone brought a Trader Joe's challah, and we did a blind taste test, and that won. Everybody agreed.
Really?
Yeah. It had the perfect sweetness. It had that stretchy pull. It was great.
The sweetness is key. Our recipe that I use it's some sugar and some honey. Mm-hmm. That's key.
Yeah, the sweetness.
The time I've forgotten the honey.
But the texture for me is above all. If I cut into a challah and it just has a nice crumb that whatever the holes and it looks like a cake or another kind of bread, I'm like, no. It's got to have that gnarly,
it's got to be a little
twisty,
bit of a pull. It's got to be a little pull, a little stretch. Yes, absolutely. No question. All right, now I want challah. Now I'm hungry. Thank you for that. Last couple questions, and we'll let you get out of here. Speaking of food, what is your favorite Jewish food?
My favorite Jewish food is kasha varnishkas.
Okay.
It was my mom's specialty. Like nobody made kasha like Roberta, and just every holiday except Pesach, that was always on the table. Like Thanksgiving, it didn't have to be a Jewish holiday.
Yeah.
Always on the table, and nobody could ever replicate it. And then ages ago, so I was living in Germany after college. And I wanted to make a meal for the Jewish community in this tiny town that I was living in. So I had my mom send me some of her recipes.
Okay.
And she wrote out the recipe for kasha vanishkas. Like she typed it, but my mom was not a recipe person. She was like, it was like a novel. I mean, it's the longest sheet of paper I've ever seen. It's just paragraphs and paragraphs of diagrams of how to cut the onions and then no quantities, of course, at all. It's
Obviously.
like, does this seem like enough? And then at the very end, when she explains how to season it and she goes, taste it. Does it taste like mine? Good. That's you had to have experienced her kasha to make it again.
Right.
And, but I'm so grateful that I have that printout because my mom died in 2019 and I made her kasha for the Shiva.
Yeah.
I made like the biggest batch I'd ever seen from that recipe. And it just felt so fitting. Like people needed to eat her kasha and so it's a special dish for me, but only really when I make it. 'Cause who makes it, first of all? And, what restaurant can you get kasha vanishkas?
You can't. It's not a thing.
And if I did see it in a restaurant, like in New York or something, I'd order it. But it doesn't quite hit the spot.
Not the same. It's not the same.
No.
I mean, and that's the thing about food. It's the smells, the taste, the memories that, like, a bite of something can evoke. It's different when it comes out of your kitchen or a relative's kitchen than some restaurant. It's not the same thing.
When you smell for me, when I smell like buckwheat, which is like not all the time, it's a very occasional thing, but I smell that and it's like, ooh, sends me back.
Yeah.
And yeah. There's a really good kasha bread at Asa's Bakery. Do you know Asa's?
I know Asa's.
Yeah. So I think it's Thursdays, but double check.
Okay.
He makes it's like a sourdough loaf, but like with kasha in it. And it is so good. And it does have that memory,
sort of that callback
flavor smell thing.
Interesting.
It's really good with salty butter.
Yeah.
Everything's
good with salty.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Oh, my favorite Jewish holiday, Shemini Atzeret. No, I don't know what that is. Has anyone ever said that was their favorite?
No.
I don't know what it is. I had to learn some of these because my kids go to Jewish preschool, did go to Jewish preschool, so they were off for all these holidays, and I'd be like, "What are you off for now? Come on!" I'm probably the same as like everyone, which is Passover.
Sure.
It's the best. I mean, it's the food holiday,
right?
And it's the weird food holiday with all the restrictions, but like it's kind of great because you got to make these other things and make them work.
I'm unreasonably excited for Charoset.
Yeah,
I love Charoset.
Charoset's good. I always love it, like, when I make it, and then I'm like, you end up with so much, and I'm like, I'm going to eat this all week, and then I never touch it again.
Oh, no, I just grab a spoon, throw it in a dish, munch it, have it all week. I don't need matzah. Like, a spoon is a perfectly acceptable vehicle for me. I don't need matzah. I mean, really don't need matzah. So
I actually really love matzah.
I do too, but like
Passover,
at the end of the week, by the end of the week, it's like, I don't need this. This is not.
I love
working.
matzah with cream cheese, and then I sprinkle a little everything bagel seasoning on it.
Oh.
And I'm happy with that. And matzah brie. I love matzah brie. That was something my mom made too, and. But she'd make it two ways. Like she'd make the savory one that was like scramble-y, for me and her. And then for my dad, he liked it like a pancake that was like the sweet kind, I think.
Yeah.
And all in one blob.
Yes. Cut it like a pizza. Into wedges.
That's okay too.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Tastes the same.
I don't mind matzah.
No. To a point though. But again, like by the end of, you got to pace yourself. Is the key.
Yeah.
By the end of that week,
if you actually finish the box by the end, you're golden. Like it's always like I end up with like 3 or 4 boards at the end, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna finish this because I don't have to anymore.
I'd have fried matzah all the time though. If I allowed myself to have fried matzah. It's so good. Sharyn Jackson, thank you so much for joining me. This was a blast. I love talking food with you. This was a great time. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks.
The Who the Folk podcast is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network and a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.